Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Golisano Foundation, supporting Move to Include programming on WXXI and working with the community to lead change toward the inclusion of people with intellectual and physical disabilities. Share your thoughts at movetoinclude.org. And The Artful Gardener, offering decorative arts for the home from American-made craft to frost-proof planters, and providing garden design services with more than 40 years of experience. Located on Mount Hope Avenue and online at theartfulgardenerny.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Mona Seghatoleslami, in for Evan Dawson for this hour of the show, and our connection was made in 4000 BCE, when harpists were depicted as healers in ancient frescoes. And then again in 1697, when William Congreve wrote in his play The Mourning Bride, "Music hath charms to soothe a savage breast, to soften rocks or bend a knotted oak." That is right, it's breast, not beast in that famed quote, and despite Shakespeare saying many famous things, that one is not on him. Here's another connection. In 1975, 50 years ago, when the music therapy program at Hochstein was first developed in collaboration with Nazareth College and thrives today as the Expressive Arts program. And again, this year, when Jon Batiste collaborated with Joanne Loewy of Mount Sinai on a study that advances social music, as a prescription for better health outcomes. Basically, countless times throughout history, people have concluded that music has a role in healing and health. Well, what does that really look like in practice? We have some great examples right here in our community, so we have some great guests to talk to. Jennifer Phillips, a board-certified music therapist and neurological music therapist, specializing in early intervention, elder care, and neurorehabilitation, who's chair of the Expressive Arts Department at Hochstein. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Annika Bentley, classical choral musician and singer-songwriter. She's the artistic director of Mount Hope World Singers. Their upcoming concerts, Bright Threads, June 10th and 11th at MCC, have a program that reinterprets historical and cultural examples of music used for healing and centering on themes of shared humanity and restorative connection. So glad to have you here, Annika.
Thanks for having me.
And Gaelen McCormick, director of Eastman Performing Arts Center. She's here to share some of the work that she and her colleagues are doing at the intersections of music and medicine. Hello, Gaelen.
Hi, nice to be here.
So I guess I will start with you, Jennifer, to talk about something that years ago I've had a chance to talk with some of your colleagues. That is, while we know that there's a great healing effect to music and it's very comforting to be around music, there's something different than the actual clinical practice of music therapy. So can you lay out some of what your work in that field is?
Absolutely. So I've been a board-certified music therapist for the last almost 20 years now, and my work has taken me through a variety of places, populations, but essentially how I describe music therapy to folks who may not have heard of it is that it is a research and evidence-based healthcare profession that is administered by certified music therapists. Yes, we go to school for this. And clinical practice tends to focus on largely non-musical goals. So it's really the use of music within that therapeutic relationship to affect largely non-musical change.
So this could be about memory, movement, other things like that?
Yes, often a lot of those. So we certainly have cognitive goals, speech and communication goals, social, emotional, and basic wellness goals. And in my personal realm, working more in the NMT or neurologic kind of area, a lot of motor and cognition goals, especially when it comes to aging and neurodegenerative diseases.
And I do want to mention quickly before passing on the next question that if you have a question for our guests, you can call 844-295-TALK. That's 844-295-8255, which is toll free. Local number is 585-263-9994. You can also email us. It's connections@wxxi.org, or comment on the Connections live stream on the WXXI News YouTube channel, which if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? So Gaelen, your practice or your work at Eastman incorporates music therapy, but your team does different things as well. What are some of the other areas that you're looking at, whether it's in research or in practice?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very fortunate to work with music therapy team, many of whom studied at Nazareth and have done internships at the Hochstein School. We also look at the environmental use of music. So what happens when you walk into a hospital and instead of just hearing all of the environmental sounds, you see someone playing their guitar or playing the piano? What impact does that have on you? And what impact does that have on our staff when they see that? We also look at how we can provide music as a point of distraction to patients, being really careful not to step into that music therapy role. So we might offer that through Zoom on an iPad, and that's just a friendly conversation. We're not looking for clinical goals like Jennifer is. We're just looking to give a point of distraction when you're stuck in the hospital for a long time. We're really fortunate to have a research program as well, and we've just hired our first Evans Lamb Professor of Research for Music and Medicine. Dr. David Greenberg is joining us from the UK, and we're really excited about where that's going to go to create more evidence around how music literally changes our health and well-being.
That's amazing, and I'm looking forward to talking more about some of those specifics and programs that whether people in the community can tap into or just sort of to follow where this work goes. But I'm also going to bring in Annika, who is a practicing musician, actually, as I guess all of my guests are too, I should mention, or have been. But I think I'm really fascinated with your program with Mount Hope World Singers, where you are looking from a performance and an experience-based way of tapping into traditions of healing. So you list a few in your program of books you were turning to, sources of inspiration. Can you talk about what led you into this idea for Bright Threads?
Yeah, I did read some very beautiful books. I got myself a little a card as a community member to the Sibley Library at Eastman so that I could do some deep research and get into the stacks, and that was wonderful. The librarians there were so helpful to me. So I read, in preparation for a specific composition that I wrote for this program, I read a beautiful book about the mitochondria, and it has a very provocative title. So when I was taking it around town with me, I felt that I was perhaps shocking people in coffee shops. It's called Power, Sex, Suicide. And I wrote this piece to fit into our larger program of kind of deep, traditional and experimental healing. We're sort of creating a ritual of immersive healing with this program. This one piece is very specifically about creating healing within the body and at the cellular level. So I wanted to learn as much as possible about the mitochondria. And there were some really evocative statements in this book, like about mitochondria communicating in networks among themselves, and basically this idea of the body having a community within itself, not just being a part of a larger community. And I thought that was very powerful.
It's amazing. I've also been fascinated. Another book that I haven't yet got to read most of the essays, but done a little bit of skimming, is Music in the Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness by Rochester's own Renee Fleming. Has been thinking through perspectives of psychology through anthropology. So all these fields that sometimes we think of as being sort of different approaches keep overlapping, and then we have to try and be experts in all of them while focusing in one. So I guess perhaps for each of you, could you tell me a little bit about how you got into, if not just music itself, where you realized that the idea of music and healing and medicine came together in your life? And I can start with you, Jennifer. You're looking very thoughtful.
Well, that's a great question. And I think, I think for me, there's definitely a multifaceted answer. I think I was, I was absolutely born a musician. I've been singing since before I could talk. And so that's, music and choral music in particular, that kind of like collective, breath and that collaboration with other people, that's been such a huge part of my life personally. And when I realized, going through my early years, how much I used music in my own life, whether that was to, support or change a mood, or whether that was I used to make up songs to learn things, and this was just all on my own. I could probably sing you all of the helping verbs to the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. So, I kind of realized that I had already in those ways, woven music through my whole life. And as I, grew older and certainly got a lot more experience talking to not only musicians, but other people who were interested kind of in those same realms that I was, realized how much that was not a unique experience to me, that music, everybody says music's the universal language. I would say music is it's a language used universally by a lot of different people, and it's the kind of the core of community and culture. And that was when I realized I wanted to use music to affect positive change, and that was how I ended up in music therapy.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love that statement because, yeah, that universal language thing, again, music belongs to so many things, but in different cultures, different gestures in music signify something else. Certain song can have such different meanings. But Annika, since you are with the chorus, I realized I introduced Mount Hope World Singers without saying too much. This is a community chorus. You've done some of the most creative, wide-ranging collaborative programs I've known, with animators, with dancers, with the singers having to move together.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with them and, again, where you found music and healing together?
Sure.
That's two different questions,
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'll put them together. So Mount Hope World Singers is, as you mentioned, a community chorus. It's non-auditioned. It's intergenerational, and we are singing songs that draw from traditions all around the world. But we are not trying to teach people about different cultures. We are looking through a lens of universal humanity, and I'm doing my best with the programming to kind of indicate, without saying it explicitly, that everyone everywhere is experiencing the same kinds of things, and that it's easy for us to tap into each other's experiences via music. We don't necessarily have to understand the language to feel what people are singing about, for example. And I think, just as you mentioned, singing with other people is incredibly powerful, even just breathing with them. And heart rates have been known to synchronize, brain waves will synchronize. It's incredibly beautiful. And then, as you just mentioned, Mona, I am asking the singers to move now as well. So we're exploring this idea of treating the body as one interconnected instrument. Classical singers are often told not to move at all, don't even tap your toe inside your shoe because people will hear it. And we're taking the opposite approach, and dancers are also often told not to sing.
So yeah, that we are whole humans and that we express ourselves in different ways. I've definitely had the viola teachers who have told me, stop dancing around while you play those Bach dances.
And how could you? Why would you resist? I don't know.
So I do want to remind again our listeners that if you have a question for our guests or a comment about the role of music in your life or healing, whether in the clinical or practice sense or in the day-to-day sense, that you can call 844-295-TALK or email connections@wxxi.org. I'm also fascinated that, as Gaelen, as you talked about, a lot of the work you're doing, people are coming to a medical setting and then having music in it, though some of them are patients and some are the doctors and other practitioners. Can you talk a little bit more, I guess, about that side of it, what it's like when you're in that setting versus when you're in other settings in your life making music?
Oh, that's perfect. I'd be happy to, because I was going to share my own story of how do music and health go together.
Oh, perfect.
Some of you know I used to play in the Rochester Philharmonic, and I lost my hearing. And for a period of time, I was trying to figure out what my new career would be. And my therapist said, why don't you go play music in the hospital? Because I could still play very well. I just couldn't hear very well. And my initial thought was, why would I do that? That's a terrible idea because I'm a bass player. It's not a melodic instrument. But I did miss playing, and I went into our hospital. I went into Wilmot Cancer Center and got permission to play there every week. And it very quickly became the most important part of my week. And I started seeing how people were impacted by the music, and we didn't have a training program yet. And that very much impacted how I work with the musicians now is, how can we be sensitive when we don't know what other people are going through? And just, judging from what we've seen, and now working with music therapists to make sure that we're staying in a safe lane. What I see is really wonderful. I see people coming in, they're stressed, you can see it all over them. And then if they notice the music, how you can see a softening, you can see a relaxation happen most of the time. And people who are sitting waiting, now they have this focal point of something that's not just their watch or their phone, and something they can just listen to and kind of zone out in a very beautiful way. And what I'm seeing for our staff is, they're also very stressed. They work very hard jobs, very, very stressful jobs. And when they have a chance to come down, we're close to the coffee shop, so they can come get their coffee fix and then also have just a few minutes of something that I think is just kind of naturally surprising. You don't necessarily expect to see a musician playing live, and we have some really unusual instrumentalists in our group. So it's just been a lot of fun to offer this to everyone.
It's wonderful. And we do have a comment from YouTube that says the most healing sound I can imagine is someone playing soft cello solo like Hauser. So the bass is perhaps not far off then.
The bass is not far off, and there is science, I bet Jennifer can correct me up on, that lower pitch frequentions are calming your nervous system. So it was just coincidental, in my case. I came with what I knew how to play.
Worked out well, though.
And I guess I can then put in a sort of shout out for a group that I've played with, even though I'm not a medical professional, is it's been reborn in town thanks to the work of Isabella Cantor, the Rochester Medical Orchestra. So if you are in the medical field and play an instrument, there's a volunteer community group that you can join of medical musicians. We're about to start playing again for the summer. I love that we rehearse and play at Monroe Community Hospital, and even our rehearsals, before we sound our best, shall we say, people really love it. And so that's a reminder, even as so much goes into the work of music, that there's this great joy in it too. So I would love to further pursue some of these ideas you've been talking about with people connecting and singing. Perhaps I will go to Annika about the program you're doing. Again, you have your piece that you've composed. You have people singing together, moving together. You've commissioned new music from actually some of my favorite musicians in town. Alyssa Rodriguez, who plays the Swedish nyckelharpa, a traditional keyed fiddle. We have Chinese pipa with Leah O, and also Ken Luke, a guitarist, mandolin player, and also tapping into mbira from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Can you talk, I guess, in more detail about what it's been like to prepare some of these pieces and what the different approaches are?
Sure. And I just also wanted to take a moment to respond to something that Gaelen said about the low tones, because in my research, I was reading that more ancient, traditional, and tribal practices of music as medicine tend to draw on low tones, as well as having rhythm be a primary focus. And it's very grounded in the feminine. And it's really interesting to me. In my reading, I could not claim to be an expert on this, but I read that there was a shift kind of around the time of ancient Greece, toward logic, obviously, and linear thinking, and that moves us more toward high pitches, high tones, as well as masculine intellectualism, which is pretty fascinating, I think. And we are trying to bring back in this program a lot more low tones and rhythmic-based material. So a little bit of euphoric chant and trance is woven in there, even though these still are vocal works.
Well, and that's the chant and trance, this idea of repetition.
Yes.
This repetition is sometimes people are like, oh, it's on and on and on. And in fact, we have in English the phrase droning on. Mm-hmm. And yet drones, these low tones, this is associated with religion, with euphoria, as you said,
yes,
ecstasy, and that's even the dance music. So I don't know if any of you want to comment on the role of sort of repetition in that way.
So one thing I was going to say, just kind of from a, kind of pedagogical / cultural basis, is that, that kind of grounding note, especially if we're talking about low tones, also gives us the flexibility to kind of form our own unique things over top of that. So you'll especially thinking about kind of the base of Orff music, that tonal, that ostinato, that thing that's repeating over and over, gives so much flexibility for improvisation, which is so important too when we're talking about collaborative and social music. And anything that you do that kind of fosters that call and response, or that sense of real true belonging. Those low tones can also be just a basis for creativity, and for personal creativity, and also collaborative creativity.
Agree.
Amen.
So that perhaps brings us to some of what is there. We talked some certain things, whether it's low tones or repetition, but in other ways, what music works for each person sort of matters on the person, right? Is it less about the music and more about your relationship with it? And perhaps, Jennifer, you've had some of that experience with how you work with one client one way and another way.
Absolutely. So one thing that I would definitely say just about, music therapy as a profession, and what I tell people, when they call Hochstein and are asking about music therapy, is that it is extremely customizable to the person. It has to be, because we are whole person focused. So that is something that, if we were just we do this song for this thing at this time, it wouldn't be that kind of that kind of that intimate and personalized experience that music really should be for individuals. And certainly, if it were that way, the outcomes would not be, what they are if there is something highly personalized. It's very interesting because people will have certainly different experiences, but with the same music. So I find this actually a lot working in elder care groups, is that, one client may have a response to a song that's entirely different, emotionally, from another. And so how to manage those kinds of things in a group environment is one thing. But one thing that I love about that, especially that kind of one-on-one, because we do groups and individuals as music therapists and at Hochstein. So one thing that I really like about the, working in small groups or with individuals is that really individualized experience, because you have to be able to connect with the music that, that is used, or it won't have that impact.
The story from one of my friends I know is that he's a pianist, and his mother, who had dementia, hadn't known his name for a long time, and he played piano for her. And she said, "Oh, that was lovely, Michael," suddenly, and it just took him absolutely. So I know these, sort of anecdotal stories or stories from that, but that's perhaps where we come to this study. I know that for me, I was just fascinated to hear Jon Batiste, who we know from the Tonight Show Band and his Stay Human and all this, but that he did a study with Joanne Loewy of Mount Sinai on social music. Let me certainly not say social media again as a prescription for better health outcomes, because I think that's kind of the opposite sometimes. So what can you tell us from the field? Has this made an impact, or what her work, Joanne Loewy, I guess, Gaelen, to start with you, because I know we were talking a little bit about her. Besides the idea that making music together probably makes us feel good, what else is there to this idea?
Well, I think there's so much to this idea, because I want to let Jennifer talk about Joanne Loewy, because Joanne is a music therapist. Jennifer can talk about her research and her experience there. But I think what they're really driving at with this idea about social music, now you've got me thinking social media. Social music is what happens when we're in connection. And I think, Annika, you can speak to that so beautifully, of what happens when we're in connection and making something together. And even when we're listening to music together. I had the chance to go to the art gallery last night and listen to the Baroque organ with about 100 other of my besties. And it's just different, right, than listening to something on a CD or listening to it on your iPod. There's something about being in community together. So I know one of the things that I think it's driving at is the idea of social prescribing, that we help to address the social determinants of loneliness and isolation that really got hammered with COVID by saying, go out, here's a prescription, a literal prescription for you to go out to an art class, to go sing with world singers, and to be in community and to do something creative together as a way of really strengthening our bonds. And it has literal physical outcomes in your health and well-being, not just your mental health, but your physical health. But I want to pass to you about Joanne's work.
Yeah, so she's just absolutely fantastic. She's been, I think I've probably read every book that she's written, since my very first day of my very first music therapy class. So, one thing that we're talking about, kind of all of these connections within music, but, a lot of the things that, we all do are very similar. So there are certainly, elements that are just music therapy, elements that are just social music, elements that are, that choral and that community feel. But I think something I really like is that, Joanne Loewy, who is a music therapist, is in collaboration with Jon Batiste, a musician. And they're really working together toward this model. And I think what we're all, focused on is that sense of community and belonging. When you are a part of something bigger, you have that belonging piece. And I think the perspective that Joanne brings to that is that our training as music therapists is not only rooted in music, but in psychology, in wellness, and in social issues and things like that. So being able to, to take both of those perspectives to work together to create something that everybody can be a part of and everybody belongs to is awesome.
Nita, and I should expand this out for Hochstein. When we say expressive arts, that refers to music therapy, but also arts and dance therapy, so that this can be expressed in different ways. And I also know you have a new podcast talking about this.
We do. So our department does music, art, and dance movement therapy. And we also do what we call adaptive and inclusive instruction. So I started this, this recording by saying that music therapy targets largely non-musical goals through the use of music. However, in our expressive arts Arts Department, we do also have clients who come in who are specifically looking to learn an instrument and may need a more very carefully adapted, inclusive environment for their specific learning needs. And so they come to us because we also have a background. So we work a ton at Hochstein with the disability community. That's why the program was initially started in collaboration, with Nazareth College, now Nazareth University. And so, so that still remains one of our largest populations today. And that we want them to have that space of belonging as well.
That's wonderful. And the new podcast is called?
The new podcast is called Taking Notes, Equity in Expressive Arts. You can find it on Hochstein's YouTube channel.
So yeah, I've been enjoying listening to the first episodes and learning more, even being around music all my life and knowing music therapists. I've been finding new, interesting perspectives. So I think we do have to take our one break for the hour, but when we come back, I want to both get sort of broader and philosophical, music of the spheres style, but then also more practical, whether or not you're dealing with an illness, ways to incorporate more music into your life and our community. So we'll be right back.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org.
You're listening to Connections. I'm Mona Seghatoleslami, in for Evan Dawson, and we are talking about music and healing in many different ways, from participating in community music groups to the clinical practice of music therapy to other ways that at Eastman and Hochstein and groups in our community that we do connect through music and medicine and healing. And some of the threads have been about clinical studies and research. Some have been about services you can access here, research being done. But I'm also fascinated. Annika has brought up some really heady ideas that I like about mitochondria and tradition and the feminine. And I know one of the big old ideas from Pythagoras and Plato is the idea of music of the spheres, things that don't seem to tap into always our modern notion of science, but still are, whether metaphorical or powerful in how we think about things. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about your research or reading, your free-flowing sort of creative ideas that have been coming in, if that's not too vague to let you go.
How many hours do we have? But I did also just want to respond, and it's in line with what you just asked me, but to the things that Gaelen and Jennifer were just saying, because community has been this integral part of historical and non-Western music as medicine. You pretty much do not practice music as medicine without or outside of the community. And it's wild to me that we would even consider it here because it's such a necessary component. I also read that listening to music that you dislike activates the fear response in the amygdala, which I find very provocative, and is connected to this idea that healing does not necessarily always have to be associated with feeling good or soothed. Sometimes there is a healing crisis that can lead to something very genuine. And obviously you wouldn't want to just recklessly provoke that response. You would have to be extremely careful. But in this artistic work that we're making with Mount Hope World Singers and our collaborators right now with Bright Threads, I think we are able to dip into maybe a little bit more of that kind of surprise and discomfort.
That's really interesting, and it's a positive way of framing it, because first when you mentioned it, I thought of, I don't want to go too dark here, but one of the most upsetting things to me from the past few years, in many upsetting things, was that music was used in torture.
Yes.
Because as we say, music has power that can be good or bad. It can be used in propaganda. It can be used in a lot of other things.
Yes, and rhythm used for war specifically.
So thinking responsibly about the effect we have on people is an interesting consideration, and I think an important one. I did want to remind our guests that since we've had a few comments so far, that they are also welcome to join. If you have a question or a comment, again, that number, 844-295-TALK. That's 844-295-8255. The email address, connections@wxxi.org, and I think someone's monitoring that to share that, or the Connections live stream on the WXXI News YouTube channel that you can comment there as well. And Annika, as you said about working in community, I know we've talked about the experience of the pandemic and also the changes in your musical life from something that is a bit more solo sometimes, being a singer-songwriter on the road, to then being part and leading a choral group. Can you talk a bit about those different experiences for you?
Sure. They are very different, and then still so rooted in community, both of them, in very different ways. So I feel like obviously I was playing with a band as a singer-songwriter, and we have a broad community of audience, so places that we were traveling to, and people who are listening are involved in the music. And yet, I think that experience can also feel lonely and potentially isolating because you're away from your home community. You're traveling all the time. And it's so fantastic to engage with strangers, and music is such a beautiful universal language, as you said, Gaelen, and a bridge. But still, you're presenting your artwork in kind of like a cold scenario, day after day after day, and you're just hoping that it will go well, that things will go well. And it's been incredibly rewarding for me to find myself in the role that I'm in now with Mount Hope World Singers. That's not something that I specifically went to school for or plan to do, but I have been a singer and a choral singer for my whole life. And we're non-auditioned, we're community-based, so we are largely avocational. We do have a few professional singers in the mix. And I just think that it is so powerful to see singers working together and helping one another to do things that they thought were beyond their scope initially, things that seemed strange or too difficult.
It's wonderful. And I have a couple comments from email, but first I am also going to ask Gaelen about, since you mentioned that change in your life from being in the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, in a way, this was also your community. Did you feel some sense of loss, or what else have you found? I guess I don't want to go too deep into it because you've processed it in a lot of conversations probably, but a little bit of that sense of working with a professional ensemble for that shared goal.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I felt that sense of loss because playing in the bass section, like they were my buds, they're practically like my brothers, and playing in the orchestra too. But Annika, you bring up this really great point, which is that, you know, we present the music, and sure, there's the community of listeners, and they're here in Rochester, but it's not the same exchange of energy even or conversation that I'm seeing now. And I feel like I have this whole new community now that I'm back working at my alma mater at Eastman and mentoring students and watching their response, which is similar, but, you know, also their own response as they start playing in the hospital and they say, oh, wow, I'm really thinking now, like, when I give a recital, I have much more compassion about the people that are coming in, even though they chose to be there. Like, I'm just having a much more of like kind of a 360 about what people's lives are like. And so that's been really wonderful. So, I mean, I'm still in touch with my friends in RPO, but I'm going to be honest, I don't miss the schedule. It's a lot. It's heavy work.
They're playing, actually, Annika, won't you be singing with Carmina Burano with the
Yes.
Oratorio Society at the end of the month?
Yes, May 30th and 31st.
So
I
that's
think
even
Saturday and Sunday.
So that's even before your concert coming up. Well, I do
Yes.
have a few comments here that I would love to share, and then a caller I'll bring in. Having a little bit of glare with my screen with my computer. Let's see if I can do this. Email from Jackie, who says, I'm a happy participant in an RPO community program called New Horizons. So that's Eastman and RPO in the community. Targets older adults who may have never played an instrument or who abandoned music early in their lives. At 75, I've always regretted the lack of music in my life, but this spring I took beginner piano lessons, and happily I'm continuing with music lessons through the program in the fall. I've found focus and enjoyment. I've noticed an improvement in my short-term memory. It's challenging and a real joy. So New Horizons is an amazing opportunity in the community, and it's chorus, it's band, it's strings, it's piano, it's so much. So any other thoughts on that, or just...
I just wanted to add in that, you know, if people are interested in coming to Hochstein, the first thing I say is it's not only for kids. We really do have people of literally all ages and abilities. And I think for people who start, music lessons later in life, you are never, it's never too late to start playing an instrument. I've said this, you know, to my own family. My mom started taking piano lessons in her 70s. So it's just a very... it's really neat. And if we're thinking about it, you know, I have a little bit more of that neurologic lens, but, music creates those neural pathways. And so being able to, there's so many benefits that maybe you're not even expecting by taking an instrument that you end up seeing, because music affects really all of those areas, and memory being one of them.
So it really is, although we've kind of known this intuitively about the positive of music, once the research gets there, it's starting to show things in our actual neurons.
Absolutely, yes.
It's amazing. So I also have an email from Barb who says, after my husband's stroke, he barely spoke and had trouble coming up with words and could not form sentences. But when a song came on the radio he was familiar with, he would start to sing along. Still not getting all the words, but it sparked a willingness to sing alone. He then signed up for music therapy, which over time helped tremendously to improve his speech and cognitive abilities. Mm-hmm. It's another example, very, direct example of improving.
Mm-hmm. And neuroplasticity is something that we are still learning so much about, but is such a cool thing. So if you have, a stroke and it affects the Broca's area of the brain, which is, what is responsible for speech generation, we can really use the other parts, the other side of the brain to because that's what processes music. So to kind of make up for that, so being able to to actually find and participate in music therapy following a stroke is that's wonderful that he's able to do that.
And so if people are interested in this kind of experience, there is Hochstein, and there are other music therapy providers in the area, and then Eastman through Performing Arts Medicine. Is that something the community can come to for music therapy?
No, right now we're still an inpatient-facing program. We do have one external program at Strong Recovery, but we're looking to develop that.
And I know also at Nazareth University, there's a practice there. And then for participating, as we said, New Horizons is great. There's also a number of community orchestra bands and choruses. I think in addition to Annika's chorus, a great way to find people is the Greater Rochester Choral Consortium.
Yes.
It's a website that has a list of everything from, small vocal groups to large symphonic choirs. So we're all over, I think, the world, there are people making music. But in Rochester, whether it's lucky or because we have all these things coming together, really, I've been involved in so much more amateur music making here.
I wanted to just quickly say that Mount Hope World Singers percussionist is the director of New Horizons Band, Don Sherman, and he's a fantastic, incredible, generous musician. We love playing with him.
And I play bass with Cheryl Guth, who conducts some of the strings with New Horizons. So yeah, small town, but definitely, certainly get in touch if you're looking for more, if you're not finding it. And I don't want to forget that we do have Ingrid in Penfield on the line who has a few short stories to share. Hello, Ingrid.
Hi, I want to thank you for this informative and inspirational and delightful conversation. And thank all of you for the work you're doing. Just really, I'm a musician. We definitely miss Gaelen in the RPO, but what you're doing, Gaelen, is just unbelievable. And I'm learning guitar for those neural connections. I thought I had most of the neural connections from playing cello that I was going to get, so I thought I'm going to learn a new instrument. And I belong to the adult guitar ensemble at ECMS down at Eastman, taught by Dr. Lynn McGrath. It is so delightful, and I swear I feel those little neurons firing in my brain because I'm very unskilled at the guitar, and so there's a lot to learn, and it's making a big difference for me. This is a sort of a stupid thing, but after years of taking music slightly for granted in a pleasant way, I went to a party in the past couple of years where I was not expecting any music. So I walked into this big room, this venue, and there was a string quartet, and I was astounded at the gut punch in a good way that I got from this music. I was like, oh, festive, celebration, party. It had such a visceral effect on me, and it really got me thinking. And when I retire, I am planning call on me if anybody needs me. I would love to be involved with what some of you are doing, playing for people and making lives better through music. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. I love your playing in the RPO and when you've played for Yom Kippur, that beautiful Kol Nidre, that moment in a service that otherwise... That was an honor. That was an honor. And by the way, I heard that you play bass, so you're going to be hearing from me. I did not realize that. Oh, so that's Gaelen, though I play a little bass guitar. And that's sort of in my...
I know about Gaelen, but if I start hounding her, she's going to be mad. Maybe.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. This has been a wonderful chance to talk about, again, these very practical ways while also thinking about big philosophical ideas. So I also like, if someone's a curious person, they can sign up for music lessons. They could go to some of these performances and learn more, but they could also follow up definitely on that sort of bibliography that's on Annika's show page on the Mount Hope World Singers website. Some books that I have had to put on my reserve list at the library, which is Healing Songs by Ted Gioia, The Soul of Imbira by Paul Berliner, and I heard there was a Secret Chord by Daniel, is it Levitin?
I think it's Levitin, yes.
So yeah, can you just a little bit about what draws some of these together?
Sure, and actually I was just thinking about that Daniel Levitin book because of something that Jennifer said that, I don't know, sparked in my mind a connection to this idea of experiential fusion, when you lose track of your own consciousness as a separate thing and you become fused with whatever it is you're doing. And I think music is an incredible gateway to that. And then this idea of engaging in experiential fusion with a whole bunch of other people is like astounding. And I was curious, Jennifer, if you know if the mirror neurons have a lot to do with that. I'm sure, like we said, it's also just even simple actions like breathing together. But there must be so many reasons for that.
There's a lot of great research out there, a lot of which I'm still learning myself. I recently have been delving a little bit more into mirror neurons, and they certainly play a part, but that's like, that's probably a whole other conversation down the road. But I have read Levitin's books, both of them. And another one, Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks, which is certainly older now, but just absolutely wonderful for talking about, he was really before his time with like neuroplasticity and how music affects the brain and body. So, certainly to add that to your bibliography too,
yes.
Mona.
And he wrote this beautiful essay in a book, I think, called The River of Consciousness. I'm not sure if that's the correct title, something like that, where he talks about creativity requiring these periods of gestation and kind of like lying fallow. So that you need to take in some new ideas, like maybe you go to a concert, you go to one of these performances that we're talking about, you take in these new ideas with your friends, whoever else is in the audience. And then before you try to make your own work, you just kind of let that sit in your brain and go through its own process, so that way back in your subconscious, new connections and probably illogical connections can be formed. So I think that's very healing as well, like in a profound way that we wouldn't even really be able to predict consciously, and certainly not to control.
One of my favorite live performances recently was the Silk Road Ensemble with Rhiannon Giddens, and it involved singing as an audience and talking about the beloved community and bringing together these different traditions. It was something
I was there.
Yeah, I knew it would be beautiful, but I didn't expect it to sit so physically with me for so long.
It was powerful.
That was pretty amazing. So I am also want to bring in another idea that involves music and medicine from another perspective, which is as musicians, we perform and our bodies can break down. Music can even be damaging to us, whether it's dealing with focal dystonia, with damages to the hands, to the ears. And of course, there's a whole nother conversation about how then, due to this high performance culture, we try to hide it and possibly worsen it. But I know that Eastman Performing Arts Medicine is addressing some of that. I was fascinated to learn some people. So could you talk about, if someone is a musician, whether professionally or avocationally, what sort of things that are being done to help heal and maintain the musical body?
Yeah, that's really accurate, and it's unfortunate, right? It's not will you get injured, but when will you get injured as a professional musician? One of the things we're doing here, we have a lot of specialists in the field that's called performing arts medicine, which is sort of the equivalent to sports medicine. And we've set up you call a funnel. There's a phone number you can call on our website, and you can get in to see the specialist, often within 48 hours if you have something that's interfering with your ability to perform. But what I asked if we could do when I was hired, I said, well, could we also train people to not get into these situations? So I've partnered closely with Dr. Ralph Manchester, with our University Health Service and our counseling center, so we could start to bring things to musicians that really help them to become more aware of their bodies, how to take care of themselves, nutrition. There's so many things with physical therapy that can help us in advance of getting injured.
Yeah, playing viola, it's a very imbalanced instrument, so we do odd things, and it's definitely taken, its toll over time. But I think Regina Carter, the jazz violinist, has been talking a lot about what happens to performing arts musicians. So I guess that's maybe just for anyone out there listening, not just take care of yourself, but there are people working on how you can do that better. I guess since we just have a few minutes, I'm checking to make sure I don't have to get anyone else on the line, though I love having comments as well. Those have been really wonderful. And I think speaking to what we're talking about, I'm going to give you each a couple minutes to talk about something, whether it's you're looking forward to or something really special to you within this topic that, did something happen recently working with a client or making music that, you want to go out and put a button on it right at the end, or just something to look forward to that you can connect in the community.
I think it'd be hard to choose just one. I have I'm really very privileged to be able to work with a wide, variety of clients. And I have those kind of like whoa moments every day. You know what I mean? So I'm very, very, very honored to be able to have that. One thing, just personally, I think, I think of I have like my work musicianship, and then I have like my own musicianship. One thing that I found early on in my career was that it was really hard to do both, and to like balance those things together. And I started to kind of lose that like time for myself and my own like musical soul, So I made sure to rejoin a choir. I've pretty much always been in choirs. And this year, through my children's school district, we had an opportunity to be a part of this inaugural family band, which was like the coolest thing because it was all band students ages or grades 6 through 12, and any of their family members who had ever played an instrument. And it was such a cool experience. I grew up actually as a violinist, not a vocalist, and picked up clarinet, just for a little while. It had been 25 years since I had played. And I was like, well, there's this band thing. So I have to, and so I dusted it off and it was great. And so I got to, participate and playing, my husband's a trombonist, my son is trumpet, and I played clarinet, and we all did this concert together. And it was just like the coolest experience. So that was definitely something, for me that just kind of fed my music soul recently.
Wonderful. And that definitely speaks to me because every day my life is music on the radio. But then sometimes I think I could do more work projects and not go to community orchestra. But I've got to protect that. It's very difficult for me, though.
Yeah.
And then Annika?
What comes to mind actually is that I want to thank Gaelen for bringing Dr. Charles Lim, is that his name? Yes, to Rochester last year for this talk at the Academy of Medicine. He said something that has really stayed with me since that talk about accessing the flow state through music, and that when we're in a flow state, the prefrontal cortex totally disengages. So we're like free from conscious thought. And I'm just trying to do that like all the time now. I suppose you can't do it all the time. You need metacognition as well as flow. But it's just a fantastic thing to think about. And I'm so appreciative that you brought him here to our community. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that was my pleasure. He is my hero. He's done a lot of work on music and what music is like the highest form of hearing. And he's done a lot of work for people with cochlear implants. And now that I have one, I'm so appreciative of that. I want to share my most recent thing. I just wrapped up a course yesterday at the School of Medicine, just a little 4-week elective course on music and sound in healthcare. And so I was doing kind of a roundtable wrap up with the med students who are so bright and so compassionate, and just asking them like, okay, what are you taking away? How can we use this? And a couple of them really noted the difference between children and adult in the hospital, that for children, we're really careful to give them a very robust, as much of a normal experience as possible. And for adults, we're just really limited in that. And a lot of them said, well, what could we do now? We could be offering music. We could be helping them make their own playlists. Like they're all really aware of they can't go in and start to do things that are like music therapy, but they can suggest to someone, are there things you'd like to listen to? And so I guess I just offer that to other people. Like, are there times when you can be leaning into music just to support yourself?
Mm-hmm. That's a lovely thought. And I just, while we have a couple minutes here, thinking about it, as you work both with music students to learn more about the medical side of things, which I might find myself more like those music students, or with doctors, I guess another thought on the things you're opening up for students to consider, like, are they hearing this more as they grow up in music, or is it sort of a revelation to think about approaching their art a bit differently in this healing context?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it depends where the student started out and what were they exposed to. But the thing I'm noticing overall is more students are coming in to be trained and just saying, I'm looking for my purpose as a musician. And I think that's beautiful that they're not coming in and saying, here's my high flying list of things I am going to accomplish before I'm 23, that it's really this exploration of what it is to be in the community.
Let's get back to something I really liked in a book I've been talking a lot about Spotify and the perfect playlist and the cost. It's not about finding that one right streaming platform that does things better. It's instead, what sort of world do we want and where does music fit into that? And so I've heard a number of great examples here. I do want to let people know that they can go to this Bright Threads concert we've been talking about, 7 p.m., June 10th and 11th at MCC. And that you can find that at mounthopeworldsingers.org.
Yes.
As well as hearing you singing in Carmina Burana.
Yes.
Wonderful. And Jennifer, if people want to connect with you, they can follow Hochstein on social media, and it's hochstein.org. Any other thoughts on just how to connect?
No, that would probably be the best way. And if you're looking for expressive arts specifically, we do have our YouTube channel, or just reach out and you'll find me.
Neat. And Gaelen, Eastman Performing Arts Medicine, online, social media, all the things?
All the things, yes.
Well, thank you so much to Gaelen McCormick of Eastman Performing Arts Medicine, to Jennifer Phillips of Hochstein in the Expressive Arts Department, and Annika Bentley of Mount Hope World Singers for this conversation today on connections about music and healing. I hope it sparked some ideas and some inspiration, because again, I think this is something that, as we've even alluded to, it can be easy enough to take for granted, or there's just more and more we're learning, but perhaps the best way is to go out and experience it in different ways in your life. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for the next hour of Connections with Scott Pukos. We'll continue to our sort of arts focus on Friday here, to be talking about summer movies as we head into the Memorial Day weekend. I'm Mona Seghatoleslami. It's been delightful to be your guest host, and I want to say thanks to our crew as well, Robert Braden, and also to all the video crew working downstairs. It takes so much to put on this show. And also to... I'm having one of those Friday moments. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.